Michael Bennett stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the San Francisco skyline shimmer in the late afternoon sun. At 52 he had everything money could buy, the multi-million-dollar tech company he'd built from scratch, the sleek Tesla parked in his private garage, and the respect of Silicon Valley's elite. Yet something felt hollow in his carefully curated world, an emptiness he couldn't quite name. Across the city, in a modest apartment above a local bookstore, 25-year-old twins Jason and Alex Parker were huddled around their mother Sarah's hospital bed. The cancer had spread faster than anyone expected, and now time was slipping away like sand through their fingers. Sarah's once vibrant face was pale against the white pillows, but her eyes still held that familiar determination they'd seen throughout their childhood, the same look she wore when working double shifts at the diner to put food on their table, or when helping them with late-night study sessions that eventually earned them both scholarships to UC Berkeley. "Mom, please," Jason pleaded, holding her fragile hand. "You've been talking about our father more these past few weeks. We're old enough now. Who is he?" The question hung in the air, heavy with 25 years of mystery and unspoken truths. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she glanced between her boys, so different in personality, yet sharing the same strong jaw and piercing green eyes she'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "Your father," she whispered, reaching for the worn leather journal on her nightstand, "is Michael Bennett." The name hit the twins like a physical force. Everyone in San Francisco knew Michael Bennett, the tech mogul whose face graced magazine covers and whose company, Bennett Innovations, was revolutionizing artificial intelligence. They'd walked past his building countless times, never knowing they were passing the father they'd never met. "But why?" Alex demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. "Why didn't you ever tell him about us? Tell us about him?" Sarah's fingers trembled as she opened the journal, revealing newspaper clippings and old photographs she'd kept hidden for decades. "I was 22 working as a junior software developer at his first startup," she began. "Michael was brilliant, driven, and married. When I found out I was pregnant, his company was on the verge of its first major breakthrough. He was working 18-hour days, fighting to keep his dream alive and his marriage together." She paused, drawing a shaky breath. "I couldn't bring myself to be the one who destroyed everything he'd built. So I left, took a job across the city, and raised you both on my own." The twins sat in stunned silence, their world tilting on its axis. All those times they'd seen Michael Bennett on TV or online, reading about his success, his philanthropy, his perfect life, he'd been their father living just miles away, completely unaware of their existence. "He's hosting a charity gala at the Augustine next week," Sarah said softly, pressing the journal into Jason's hands. "I've kept every article, every piece of information about him, hoping someday you'd understand. Maybe it's time he knew the truth too." The Augustine was San Francisco's most exclusive restaurant, where the city's elite gathered to see and be seen beneath crystal chandeliers and gold-leafed ceilings. As Sarah's words sank in, the twins shared a look that spoke volumes. Their lives were about to change forever, and there was no going back. Subscribe to our channel. It motivates us to create more content for you. Back in their shared apartment that evening, Jason and Alex pored over their mother's journal, each page revealing another piece of the puzzle they'd never known existed. Photos of a younger Michael Bennett showed him standing proudly outside his first office, a converted garage in Palo Alto. The same green eyes that looked back at them in the mirror every morning gazed out from those faded pictures, full of determination and dreams. "Look at this," Alex said, pointing to a newspaper clipping from 1999. He almost lost everything that first year. The company was 3 days from bankruptcy when he landed the Watson contract. He ran his fingers over the headline, wondering how different their lives might have been if Bennett Innovations had failed instead of becoming a tech giant. Jason sat at their small kitchen counter, his laptop open to Bennett Innovations' website. "He's giving the keynote speech at the charity gala," he murmured. "Something about bringing AI education to underfunded schools?" The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Their father was now championing education for underprivileged kids when his own sons had grown up clipping coupons and applying for every scholarship they could find. The twins' small apartment told the story of their own journey, academic awards displayed proudly on the walls, alongside photos of them with their mother at their college graduation. They'd fought hard for everything they had, just like their father had. But while Michael Bennett had found his success in the tech world, his sons had chosen different paths. Jason becoming an environmental lawyer and Alex pursuing a career in pediatric medicine. "Remember when Mom used to take us to that little park across from Bennett Innovations?" Jason asked, lost in thought. "She'd pack our lunch and we'd sit there for hours. I always thought she just liked the view, but... His voice trailed off as the realization hit him. She'd been giving them glimpses of their father's world, the closest she could manage without revealing the truth. Alex pulled up the Augustine's website on his phone, studying the opulent interior. "We can't just walk in there," he said. "That place has a 3-month waiting list, and the gala is invitation only." But even as he spoke, a plan was forming in his mind. Their mother had taught them that anything was possible with enough determination. It was how they'd made it through college, how they'd built their careers from nothing. A notification popped up on Jason's laptop. Another article about Michael Bennett, this one discussing his recent divorce. The twins exchanged glances, a new understanding dawning. Their father was single now for the first time in their lives. The marriage their mother had tried so hard to protect had ended anyway, adding another layer of complexity to their already complicated emotions. "We need to find a way into that gala," Jason decided, his lawyer's mind already analyzing the problem from every angle. "Not just to meet him but for Mom. She's carried this secret for 25 years, thinking she was protecting everyone. She deserves to know what happens next." Alex nodded, pulling out his hospital ID badge. "I treated the daughter of one of the Augustine's managers last month." He remembered. "She was so grateful when we caught her son's rare condition early. Maybe." He let the thought hang in the air, possibility sparking between the brothers. As night fell over San Francisco, the twins remained at their kitchen counter, surrounded by the pieces of their father's life their mother had so carefully preserved. Through the window, they could see the gleaming tower of Bennett Innovations in the distance, its lights burning bright against the darkening sky. In just 1 week they would come face to face with the man who had unknowingly shaped their entire lives. The father who might not want to be found, the success story they'd watched from afar, the missing piece of their family puzzle that might change everything. Michael Bennett's morning routine was a well-orchestrated symphony of efficiency. As his private elevator descended to the lobby of his luxury high-rise apartment building, he scrolled through the day's agenda on his tablet, barely registering the spectacular Bay Bridge views through the glass walls. At 52 he had mastered the art of maximizing every minute, yet lately he'd been haunted by the feeling that he might have maximized his way past something important. The lobby doors opened to reveal his waiting Tesla, but something made him pause. "I'll walk today, James," he told his driver, surprising himself as much as the man who'd driven him every morning for the past decade. The crisp morning air felt foreign on his face as he strode down the sidewalk, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the pavement. Lost in thought, Michael almost collided with a young man rushing out of a coffee shop, medical scrubs visible under his jacket. "I'm sorry," they both said simultaneously, and something in the young man's voice made Michael look twice. Green eyes met green eyes for a fraction of a second before the young doctor hurried away, late for his hospital shift. Inside the coffee shop, Jason froze with his own cup halfway to his lips, having witnessed the near collision between his twin brother and their father. Alex had been too rushed to notice who he'd bumped into, but Jason had recognized Michael Bennett instantly. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone to text his brother, watching their father continue down the street through the cafe window. Michael's walk took him past a small park, the same one where Sarah had once brought their sons. He paused, struck by a memory he hadn't revisited in years. A young woman with auburn hair, laughing as she explained a coding problem, her intelligence matching his own. Sarah Parker. She'd vanished so suddenly right when the company was taking off. He'd looked for her at first, but life had swept him forward like a relentless tide. In his office later that morning, Michael found himself typing Sarah's name into a search engine. Something he'd done periodically over the years, always finding nothing. This time, however, a recent article appeared. Bay Area Children's Hospital welcomes new pediatric resident, Dr. Alex Parker. The young doctor's photo made Michael's heart skip a beat, though he couldn't say why. Perhaps it was just the name stirring old memories. "Your son's school called again," his assistant Jennifer announced, entering with his afternoon coffee. "They're still hoping you'll speak at Career Day next month?" Michael nodded absently, his mind still on the article. The son he'd had with his ex-wife was away at boarding school in Switzerland, their relationship reduced to holiday visits and monthly phone calls. "Cancel my dinner at the Augustine tonight," he said suddenly. "I need to review the charity gala preparations myself." The restaurant's manager, Thomas, greeted him personally when he arrived that evening. As they discussed the upcoming event, Michael's eyes kept drifting to a worn leather journal left behind on one of the tables. "Someone left this earlier," Thomas explained, following his gaze. "Two young men, lawyers or doctors, I believe." They were asking about the gala. He picked up the journal, but Michael waved away his offer to examine it. Lost items weren't his concern, yet something about the battered leather nagged at his subconscious. That night, in his empty penthouse, Michael stood at his familiar spot by the windows. A message from his son in Switzerland lit up his phone, another cancelled visit. The city lights blurred as he remembered Sarah again, the way she used to tell him everyone deserved a second chance at their dreams. He'd built his company on second chances, on the belief that failure was just a step toward success. Why then did it feel like he'd failed at something fundamental? The charity gala was 5 days away. Michael didn't know it yet, but his carefully constructed world was about to change forever. The truth had been walking parallel to his life for 25 years, and soon those parallel lines would finally intersect. Subscribe to our channel. It motivates us to create more content for you. Alex burst into their apartment, still wearing his hospital scrubs, his face flushed with excitement. "You're not going to believe this," he exclaimed to Jason, who was surrounded by papers at their small dining table. "I literally ran into him this morning. And I didn't even realize it until I got your text." Jason pushed aside the legal briefs he'd been reviewing. "I saw the whole thing from Pete's coffee. It was like watching a movie, Alex. Same height, same walk, even the same way of apologizing." He ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit they both shared. "But that's not even the biggest news. I left Mom's journal at the Augustine yesterday." Alex's eyes widened. "You what? How did you even get in there?" "I had a lunch meeting with a client," Jason explained. "Very carefully orchestrated, I might add. But here's the thing. I went back an hour later to retrieve it, and the manager told me Michael Bennett had been there." "He saw the journal, Alex?" "He didn't open it, but he saw it." The twins sat in charged silence, processing the day's events. Their mother's journal lay between them now, recovered but somehow different, as if their father's brief proximity to it had changed its meaning. Inside were not just newspaper clippings and photos, but Sarah's private thoughts, written in her neat handwriting, her hopes, her fears, her reasons for every choice she'd made. Mom's latest scan results came back, Alex said quietly, the excitement of the morning fading. "The treatment isn't working as well as we hoped." He pulled out his phone, showing Jason the calendar app. "The gala is in 4 days. We're running out of time." Jason nodded, pulling out an elegant cream-colored envelope. "Remember that environmental lawsuit I won last month? The one against that big tech company?" A slight smile played at his lips. "Turns out the judge is on the Augustine's board of directors. He was very grateful that we settled out of court, saving his brother's company from public embarrassment. Grateful enough to get us 2 invitations to a certain charity gala." Alex stared at the invitations, their gold lettering catching the late afternoon light. "We're really doing this," he breathed. "After all these years, we're going to meet him." He paused, a thought striking him. "What are we going to wear? We can't exactly show up in scrubs and a lawyer's everyday suit." The next day found them at an upscale menswear store in Union Square, being fitted for tuxedos they could barely afford. As the tailor worked, they watched their reflections in the three-way mirror, no longer the struggling scholarship kids, but polished young professionals who could plausibly belong in Michael Bennett's world. "Mr. Bennett himself was in here last week," the tailor mentioned casually, adjusting Alex's collar. "Having his gala tuxedo altered. Very particular about the details, just like you young men." The twins exchanged glances in the mirror, another strange parallel in their increasingly intertwined paths. Later that evening, they visited Sarah in the hospital, their newly tailored tuxedos carefully hung in their shared closet at home. Their mother was sleeping, her face peaceful despite the medical equipment surrounding her. A news segment played quietly on the hospital room's TV, showing Michael Bennett at a tech conference. "Today's youth need opportunities," his voice came through softly. "Everyone deserves a chance to reach their full potential." The twins watched their father gesture passionately about educational access and second chances, the same determination in his eyes that had driven them through years of hard work and sacrifice. A nurse entered to check Sarah's vitals, pausing when she saw the TV. "Oh, Mr. Bennett. He's done so much for our pediatric ward," she told Alex. "Always asking about the children's stories, their families. Who would have thought a tech billionaire could be so human?" Alex finished, his voice thick with emotion. Jason squeezed his brother's shoulder, both of them watching their father's familiar yet strange face on the screen, knowing that in just a few days, they would be standing face to face with him at last. The day before the gala dawned gray and misty, typical San Francisco weather that matched the twins' contemplative mood. At the hospital, Sarah was having one of her better days, sitting up in bed as Alex checked her vital signs himself, unable to fully separate his roles as doctor and son. "I found something else in the journal," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. From beneath her pillow she pulled out an old, creased envelope. Inside was a letter she'd started writing to Michael 25 years ago but never sent. "I tried so many times to tell him," she explained, handing it to Jason. "I wrote dozens of these but could never find the right words." The letter began, "Dear Michael, by the time you read this, our sons will have been born." The twins read it together, their father's name at the top blurring as tears filled their eyes. The pages were filled with Sarah's hopes, fears, and most of all, her deep belief that she was doing the right thing for everyone involved. "You never stopped loving him, did you?" Alex asked softly, noticing the way his mother's fingers traced the faded ink. Sarah smiled, a mix of joy and sadness in her expression. "I loved what he stood for, the dedication, the vision, the belief that technology could make the world better. But more than that, I loved knowing that part of him lived on in both of you. Every time you boys got excited about a science project or solved a difficult problem, I saw him in you." Meanwhile, across the city, Michael Bennett was in his office, reviewing his speech for the gala. The words felt hollow somehow, his usual confidence shaken by the strange events of the past few days. The young doctor he'd bumped into, the forgotten journal at the Augustine, the persistent memories of Sarah, it all swirled in his mind like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. His phone buzzed with a text from his son in Switzerland. "Can't make it home for Christmas again, Dad. School ski tournament." Michael stared at the message, remembering how he'd missed his own son's birth because of a crucial investor meeting. History had a way of repeating itself, but not always in the ways we expect. Back at their apartment, the twins were doing final preparations for the gala. Alex practiced introducing himself in front of the mirror, rehearsing different ways to say the words that would change everything. "Mr. Bennett, we're your sons?" Each version sounded simultaneously too direct and not direct enough. Jason sat at their small desk, legal pad in hand, methodically writing down every possible scenario and reaction they might encounter. It was how he prepared for court cases, but this was far more important than any trial. "We need to be ready for anything," he muttered. He might be angry, confused, or just not believe us at all. Their mother's letter lay open between them, its pages worn at the creases where Sarah had folded and refolded countless times over the years. One line stood out, "They have your determination, Michael, and your heart. Even though they've never met you, they've inherited your best qualities." A text from the hospital interrupted their preparations. Sarah's fever had spiked again. They rushed back to find her sleeping fitfully, her face pale against the white pillows. The doctor and Alex immediately checked her charts while Jason held her hand, both of them acutely aware of how precious time had become. "Tomorrow," Alex whispered, looking out the hospital window toward the glittering towers of downtown where the Augustine's elegant facade waited. "Tomorrow everything changes." "Or nothing changes," Jason added, giving voice to their shared fear. "We have to be ready for that too." As evening settled over the city, the brothers made one final visit to Pete's Coffee, where their paths had almost intersected with their fathers just days before. Through the window they could see Bennett Innovations headquarters lighting up the skyline, a beacon of success and innovation that had shaped their lives from afar. Alex pulled out their mother's journal one last time, studying the collected fragments of their father's life. "Do you think he ever wondered about her?" he asked. "Ever tried to find her?" Jason watched a stream of employees leaving the gleaming tower in the distance. "Tomorrow," he said firmly, "we'll find out everything." The Augustine glowed like a jewel in the evening light, its Art Deco facade illuminated by elegant copper sconces. Inside, the twins stood in the opulent entrance hall, their rented tuxedos marking them as part of this world, if only for one night. The marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers, and the soft murmur of San Francisco's elite filled the air with anticipation. "Mr. Parker? Dr. Parker?" Thomas, the restaurant manager, approached them with a warm smile. "We have you seated at table 7. He gestured toward the main dining room, where round tables draped in cream-colored silk dotted the space like islands in a sea of luxury. "Mr. Bennett will be at the head table, of course. He's running a bit late. Something about a last-minute conference call." Jason's hand instinctively went to his pocket, where their mother's letter rested alongside the journal. They debated whether to bring them but ultimately decided these pieces of their shared history needed to be present for this moment. Alex's phone buzzed, a text from the hospital. Their mother was stable, resting comfortably. One less worry for the moment. The brothers made their way to their table, hyper-aware of every detail around them. The silverware gleamed like surgical instruments under the warm lighting, and the wine glasses sang softly when touched. They were seated with other young professionals, a software engineer from Google, a biotech researcher, a venture capitalist. The kind of people they might have grown up knowing if things had been different. "Did you see the latest profile of Michael Bennett in Tech Weekly?" the venture capitalist asked, clearly trying to network. "They say he's planning something revolutionary in AI education. The man's a genius at seeing connections others miss." Alex and Jason exchanged a look, knowing they were about to create a connection that would shock everyone in the room. The venture capitalist mistook their expression for interest and launched into a story about Bennett's famous ability to remember every employee's name, every detail of their lives. A ripple of excitement passed through the crowd as photographers began gathering near the entrance. "He's here," someone whispered, and the twins felt their hearts pound in perfect synchronization. They stood, unable to help themselves as Michael Bennett entered the room. He moved through the space with easy confidence, shaking hands and greeting people by name. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. The same tall frame, the same way of tilting their heads when listening, the same slight smile that didn't quite reach their eyes when nervous. He was wearing a tuxedo from the same tailor who had dressed them, another thread connecting their parallel lives. "That's unusual," Thomas murmured as he passed their table. "Mr. Bennett's wearing his father's watch tonight. He usually saves it for board meetings." The twins glanced at the vintage timepiece on their father's wrist, then at the identical one in the photograph tucked into their mother's journal, a reminder that the past was always present, ticking away steadily beneath the surface of their lives. The room hushed as Michael took his place at the podium, adjusting his notes with the same precise movements Alex used when preparing for surgery, the same careful attention Jason gave to his legal briefs. "Good evening," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the space. "Tonight, we're here to talk about second chances." As their father spoke about opportunity and transformation, the twins felt the weight of their mother's letter in Jason's pocket, the years of silence captured in her careful handwriting. They had planned to wait until after the speech, to approach him privately, but destiny had other plans. A commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Even Michael's, as a nurse from the hospital burst in, looking frantically around until she spotted Alex. "Dr. Parker," she called out, forgetting herself in her urgency. "It's your mother. You need to come now." The room fell silent. Michael Bennett stopped mid-sentence, something flickering across his face as he heard the name Parker. And in that frozen moment, as all eyes turned toward their table, the twins knew their carefully laid plans were about to unravel in ways they never could have predicted. Subscribe to our channel. It motivates us to create more content for you. The silence in the Augustine seemed to stretch for an eternity as Michael Bennett stared at the twins, his speech forgotten in his hands. Recognition flickered in his eyes, not of them specifically but of something familiar, something that had been haunting him all week. The young doctor he'd bumped into, the forgotten journal, the name Parker echoing in his mind. "Sarah Parker," he whispered into the microphone, still on from his interrupted speech. The name hung in the air like a spell, transforming the elegant charity gala into something more intimate and raw. "Your mother is Sarah Parker?" Alex was already moving toward the exit, his doctor's instincts taking over, but Jason stood his ground, pulling their mother's journal from his pocket. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the stunned silence. "The woman who worked for you 25 years ago. The junior developer who disappeared without a trace." Michael's hands gripped the podium, his knuckles white. "The coffee shop," he said, looking at Alex. "The journal at the restaurant." His gaze shifted between them, taking in every similar feature, every shared characteristic. "Twins," he breathed, the word barely audible. The other guests sat frozen, witnessing a private moment that felt like watching a movie scene unfold in real life. The venture capitalist at their table had stopped mid-sip, his wine glass suspended in air. The photographers who had been documenting the event lowered their cameras, sensing that this was something too personal to capture. "We need to get to the hospital," Alex said urgently to his brother. Then, looking directly at Michael, he added, "She's been asking for you." Michael Bennett, the man who had built an empire on split-second decisions, who was famous for his quick thinking and decisive action, stood motionless for what felt like the first time in his life. Then, without a word to the hundreds of guests, he stepped down from the podium and walked straight to his sons. "My car's outside," he said, his CEO authority mixing with newfound paternal concern. "We'll take it." The ride to the hospital was surreal. Michael sat between his sons in the back of his luxury sedan, the journal open on his lap. His hands trembled slightly as he read Sarah's unsent letter, his eyes moving rapidly over words written 2.5 decades ago. She never wanted to hold you back, Jason explained quietly. Your company was about to take off, your first marriage was already struggling? She made the choice she thought was right for everyone, Alex added, his medical training helping him maintain composure despite his churning emotions. Michael looked up from the letter, his face showing years of missed birthdays, graduations, and father-son moments all hitting him at once. All those times, he said, his voice rough with emotion, all those times I walked past that park, something told me to stop and look. To pay attention. He turned to Alex. You have her kindness in your eyes. Then to Jason, and her way of standing up for what's right. The car pulled up to the hospital entrance, but before they got out, Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, worn photograph. It showed him and Sarah at a company picnic, both laughing at some forgotten joke. I've carried this for 25 years, he admitted, never knowing why I couldn't let it go. As they rushed through the hospital corridors, their 3 sets of identical footsteps echoing in unison, the weight of the past 2 decades seemed to lift and reshape itself into something new. They weren't just running toward Sarah's room. They were running toward a future none of them had imagined possible mere hours ago. Inside the room, Sarah's eyes opened as she heard them enter. She saw her sons first, then Michael, and a peaceful smile spread across her face. You found each other, she whispered, reaching out her hands to all 3 of them. Finally. The hospital room became a sanctuary of whispered confessions and rediscovered connections. Sarah's medical monitors beeped steadily in the background as Michael pulled a chair close to her bedside, his sons standing protectively on either side. The elegant tuxedos they all still wore seemed oddly appropriate for this momentous reunion. I tried to find you, Michael said softly to Sarah, holding her frail hand in his. For months after you left, I had people searching. But you'd changed your number, moved across the city? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I was so careful. Changed jobs, used my maiden name. I thought I was protecting your dream, your future. She looked up at her sons. But I made sure they knew everything about you. Every achievement, every milestone. The park across from Bennett Innovations, Alex said, understanding dawning in his eyes. All those lunches weren't just coincidence, were they, Mom? Sarah smiled weakly. I wanted you to feel connected to your father's world, even if you couldn't be part of it yet. I'd watch you both playing and see so much of him in you, the way you'd solve problems together, how you'd never give up until you figured something out. Michael stood suddenly, walking to the window. His reflection showed tears he was trying to hide. All those years of success, he said, his voice thick with emotion, building the company, changing the world through technology. I thought that empty feeling was just the price of achievement. But it wasn't achievement I was missing. He turned back to his sons. It was you. Both of you. Jason pulled out his phone, showing Michael their graduation photos. We got full scholarships to Berkeley, he said. Mom worked extra shifts to buy us our first suits for the interviews. Berkeley, Michael repeated, a sad smile playing on his lips. That's where Sarah and I met. She was the smartest person in our advanced programming class. He looked at his sons with growing pride. A lawyer and a doctor. You've achieved so much without my help. But with your genes, Sarah interjected softly. Your determination. Your intelligence. She squeezed Michael's hand. I used to tell them stories about the brilliant programmer who believed technology could make education accessible to everyone. They grew up knowing their father wanted to change the world for the better. Alex checked his mother's vital signs, his professional demeanor briefly overtaking his emotional state. Her stats are improving, he announced, relief evident in his voice. The crisis has passed. Michael watched his son work, seeing the same focused expression he himself wore when solving complex problems. The children's ward, he said suddenly. The one I've been funding. That's where you work, isn't it? Alex nodded. I didn't know you were the anonymous donor until recently. I've been treating kids who got a second chance because of your foundation. Second chances, Michael murmured, remembering his interrupted speech at the gala. He pulled out his phone, quickly typing something. Jennifer, cancel all my meetings for the next week. Family emergency. He looked at his sons. 25 years of catching up to do. Sarah watched the 3 men she loved most in the world, her heart full despite her physical weakness. Michael, she said quietly, there's something else you should know. She nodded to Jason, who pulled out a thick folder from his briefcase. We've been working on something, Jason explained, spreading out legal documents and technical specifications. A new kind of educational software that combines AI with accessibility features for underprivileged students. We've been developing it in our spare time, trying to make your dream of universal education access a reality? Michael's hands trembled as he looked through the papers, seeing his own vision reflected through his son's unique perspectives. Alex's medical insight into learning disabilities combined with Jason's legal expertise in educational equity. Like father, like sons, Sarah whispered, watching Michael's face light up with the same enthusiasm she'd fallen in love with all those years ago. The monitors beeped steadily, marking time as this newfound family began to bridge the decades that had separated them. Dawn broke over San Francisco, painting the hospital room in soft golden light. Sarah had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep, while Michael and his sons remained awake, their tuxedo jackets draped over chairs, talking quietly as they pieced together 25 years of parallel lives. "I remember this day," Michael said, pointing to a photo in the journal of the twins at a science fair. "I was judging a regional competition that year. I must have walked right past you. We won first place," Alex smiled. "Created a primitive AI system that could diagnose basic plant diseases. Mom was so proud. Now I understand why she kept insisting we enter that specific competition. She never stopped believing our paths would cross when the time was right," Jason added, loosening his bow tie. "Even named our educational software project Bennett Bridge. We thought we were just honoring your work, but she knew it would eventually bridge more than educational gaps." Michael pulled out his phone, showing them photos of his own journey, the early days of Bennett innovations, the technological breakthroughs, the charitable initiatives. "Every success felt incomplete," he admitted. "I threw myself into philanthropy trying to fill something I couldn't name. Now I understand, I was looking for you both without even knowing it." Sarah stirred in her sleep, and Alex immediately checked her vitals. "Strong and stable," he reported, his professional mask slipping to reveal a son's relief. "The new treatment protocol is working better than we hoped. I want to move her to a private room," Michael said, already reaching for his phone. "The best care, the best doctors." Jason laid a hand on his father's arm. "She'd hate that," he said gently. "Mom's always believed in earning things on merit. It's why she made sure we got scholarships instead of taking charity." Michael's eyes filled with pride and understanding. "Like her refusal to take the easy path by telling me about you. She wanted to succeed, and wanted you to succeed, on your own terms." He looked around the regular hospital room, seeing it with new eyes. "But maybe we can find a middle ground. Alex, you said the children's ward needs updating?" The next few hours flew by as father and sons began planning together, their shared DNA evident in how they approached problems from multiple angles. Michael's business acumen merged seamlessly with Alex's medical expertise and Jason's legal knowledge, creating solutions that would help not just Sarah, but countless other patients. "We should head back to the Augustine," Jason suddenly remembered. "The gala?" Michael waved his hand dismissively. "Jennifer's handling it. Some things are more important than charity galas." He paused, looking at his sons thoughtfully. "Though we might want to plan a different kind of celebration soon. A more private one." Sarah woke to find her three men huddled over laptops and papers, working together as if they'd been doing it all their lives. "My dream come true," she whispered, drawing their attention. Michael moved to her bedside, taking her hand. "Sarah, I want to help with their software project. Not as a CEO or investor, but as their father. They've created something remarkable, something that could change lives. Like father, like sons," she smiled, echoing her words from earlier. "I always knew they'd find their way to your world, Michael. They just needed to build their own path first." As morning light filled the room, the family began planning their future together. Michael insisted on moving his office closer to the hospital until Sarah recovered. The twins shared stories of their childhood, filling in the blanks of their father's missing years. And Sarah watched it all with peaceful contentment, knowing that her decades-long hope for her family's reunion had finally been realized. In that ordinary hospital room, an extraordinary new chapter was beginning. The parallel lines of their lives had finally intersected, creating a pattern more beautiful and complex than any of them could have imagined. Subscribe to our channel. It motivates us to create more content for you. 6 months later, the Augustine's elegant dining room was once again filled with San Francisco's elite, but this time for a very different occasion. Michael Bennett stood at the podium, his sons beside him, as they launched the Bennett Bridge Foundation, a joint venture combining their talents to revolutionize educational access through technology. Sarah sat in the front row, her health improved enough to attend this milestone moment. She watched with tears of joy as Michael began his speech, so different from the one interrupted half a year ago. "Success," Michael said, his voice carrying clear emotion, is not measured in dollars or technological breakthroughs. For 25 years I thought I had everything: wealth, recognition, influence. But I was missing the greatest fortune of all: family. He looked at his sons with pride. Sometimes life gives us second chances in the most unexpected ways. My sons taught me that success without love is hollow, and that true wealth lies in the connections we build with others. The presentation screen behind them showed the Bennett Bridge software in action. A sophisticated AI-driven platform that adapted to each student's learning style, breaking down barriers of language, disability, and economic status. But it was more than just software. It was the bridge that had finally connected their family. Our mother, Alex, stepped forward, gesturing to Sarah, taught us that every person deserves the chance to reach their full potential. She showed us through her own example that hard work, integrity, and perseverance matter more than privilege or circumstance. Jason continued, she could have taken the easy path, used our father's name to secure our future. Instead, she gave us something far more valuable: the determination to forge our own way and the wisdom to understand that true success comes from helping others succeed. The audience sat captivated as Michael revealed that Bennett Innovations would be providing the software free to underfunded schools nationwide. The twins had insisted on this condition, embodying both their mother's principles and their father's philanthropic spirit. After the presentation, in a quiet moment away from the crowds, the family gathered in the same corner of the Augustine where the twins had first planned to meet their father. Sarah held the old journal, now accompanied by a new one chronicling their journey of reunion and redemption. I spent years building technologies to connect people across the world, Michael reflected, looking at his family. But I never understood the most important connection until now. He took Sarah's hand, the gesture speaking of forgiveness, understanding, and renewed possibility. Success isn't about what you achieve alone, Alex said, thinking of all the patients who would benefit from their foundation's medical education initiatives. It's about lifting others up along the way. And family, Jason added, isn't just about DNA or destiny. It's about choices, choosing to love, to forgive, to believe in second chances. Sarah opened the old journal one last time, showing them the first article she'd saved about Michael's success. Next to it, she placed a fresh newspaper clipping about the Bennett Bridge Foundation, the story of a family reunited through their shared vision of making education accessible to all. Some bridges, she said softly, take time to build. But once they're built, they can change everything. Outside the Augustine's windows, the San Francisco fog was rolling in, but this time it didn't separate their worlds, it united them, a family finally whole, their success measured not in millions of dollars but in millions of lives they would touch together. In the end, Michael Bennett discovered that his greatest achievement wasn't the empire he'd built or the technology he'd created. It was the legacy of love, perseverance, and compassion that Sarah had instilled in their sons, and the understanding that true wealth lies not in what we gain for ourselves, but in what we give to others. The real fortune, they all realized, wasn't in any bank account or stock portfolio. It was in the second chances that life sometimes offers us, and the courage to embrace them when they come. For in the end, no success in the world can compare to the simple miracle of a family finding its way back together, building bridges across the years to a future rich with love, purpose, and the kind of wealth that truly matters. Dear viewers, if this story of family, redemption, and true success touched your heart, we have many more inspiring stories waiting for you on our channel. From heartwarming reunions to life-changing moments, each video brings you authentic tales that remind us what really matters in life. Check out our other videos about incredible family discoveries, second chances, and the true meaning of success. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to join our community of storytellers and story lovers. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful messages of hope, love, and the unexpected ways life can surprise us with joy.